Hello everybody. So with the Diablo 4 Season 2 being out for a while now, I just wanted to go over some things that I would actually change about it that I think would actually make the game better. So the first thing is obviously going to be living steel improvements. So living steel is far too, I guess, rare compared to the Varshaw materials. And I think it creates a very lopsided experience as you just get like a ton of one and not really so much of the other, because Hell Tides obviously have a downtime, whereas Whispers will change literally like the moment that all of them expire. Not to mention you have essentially like double Whispers going on right now. So if they just made a Hell Tide just happen all the time or something like that, that would be pretty helpful. Or if they just added in more ways to get it. So or I mean really what they could do is just add a chance for Whispers to also give it. So I mean that would be a way of doing it. I wouldn't complain about that. But yeah, so they definitely need to fix that. That would probably be the way I would do it though, is just they just need to add in more ways to do it, and just make more Hell Tides happen more often. I don't see a reason for there to be like that 30-minute cooldown period. I think there should be an active Hell Tide happening. And I also think that maybe they could consider reducing the 300 soul requirement that it takes. Maybe they could consider bringing it down to like 200 or something, just so it would be faster to farm them and get in and out of the Hell Tide. So for people that have limited amounts of time, they'd be able to just kind of hop in and get one going instead of hopping in, only having, let's say, 30 minutes to an hour to play that day, something like that, and then all of a sudden, they're not able to hit a Hell Tide because the Hell Tide's on cooldown, and then even if they do hit the Hell Tide, it's so late that it requires way too many, so it would just make it a heck of a lot more efficient, I guess. So that's gonna be the first thing I would say. The next thing I would say is to make sure that going forward they keep various events. So I wouldn't mind if they actually kept the Blood Harvest events going forward even after the season is over, just so we can have more stuff to do. And I also think that kind of brings into the next point, which is going to be keep bringing forward the legendary powers. Now I do think they need to do it in a slightly different way. I'll get into that in a little bit, but to make sure that they bring that, I guess the seasonal theme forward into seasons. For example, take like the two most popular vamp powers or something, turn it into like a legendary aspect or an item or something like that, because I think something like Moonrise would actually be a really good legendary to carry forward, even if they turned it into a unique. I think that would be very, very good, because there's a whole lot of like basic skill aspects and stuff like that. Not only that, I think Metamorphosis is pretty popular, so if they turn that into an aspect or something, that would be pretty cool. But the thing is, we're getting Malignant Rings next week, right? If you haven't watched BlizzCon, they're taking the 5 most what's the word I'm looking for? Popular Malignant powers, and they brought them back. So Druid's getting Inexorable Force, which Inexorable Force looks pretty good. I think Rogue's getting the Decoy Trap one. Necro's getting Sacrilegious, so we're going to be able to just auto-cast your corpse spells. But there's actually an issue with this, right? So if you remember, back in Season of the Malignant, these were just gems that you could put into your jewelry, right? I actually think it should still be that way, right? I think it should just be a special gem you can get, because I don't think that people are going to be able to fit these into their builds as a unique ring, right? So going forward, if they are going to do this, which obviously they are, so I'm pretty hopeful that there is going to be some vamp powers. Hopefully that they make it a little bit more functional inside of builds, because I just don't see why, what people are going to replace in various builds to run something like the Inexorable Force. Now there are going to be some builds that are going to fit things like that in very easily, right? I'm sure that all the Necros are going to do the whole Sacrilegious just because it's just so good and the functionality is just amazing, right? So I'm sure some builds will like it, but then there's just going to be a lot of builds where they just can't really give up anything. So it's going to create a little bit of awkwardness. So I'm not really sure that I care for it, taking up an actual item slot. I like the idea of making it into a gem or something like that they can put into their gear and then get the effect or something like that. Because it's only like there's one of them, right? It's not like they're just loading out with 5 of them. And that would also add an interesting level of complexity if they turned, like, for example, the vampire powers also into a gem. So instead of just having, like, the damage reduction while fortified or something like that, there could be, they could add in, like, new uber bosses or something that drop in these, like, malignant gems or vampiric gems, whatever they want to call them. And then you can just put it into your gear and you can get one of the past season's effect. I think that'd be pretty cool. Now, obviously, they want to be very cautious about that because there could be a lot of power creep there. But I think it's a pretty solid idea. Like, I would very much enjoy things like the Moonrise to be carried forward, because I like to play Crone staff builds and stuff like that, so maybe I'm a little biased. And I also think Metamorphosis is amazing with Tybalt's Will, so that'd be cool, but that might actually be a little too crazy. I think that, in my opinion, I think maybe Metamorphosis shouldn't be the one they go forward, because I think it would just create a very stagnant meta where people are just gonna, because it's one thing like now, right, where you have people running like Tybalt's Will and Metamorphosis in almost every build, but it's a seasonal theme. There's always going to be that one seasonal theme thing, right? But if they carry Metamorphosis forward, they're going to carry that stagnation forward too, so it's not going to freshen up. It's one thing if a meta is like that for a couple months. It's a whole nother thing if it's like that for a year, right? So you got to be thinking about that, when you're carrying stuff forward. So I wouldn't really recommend that one. I think things like Moonrise and some of these more generic ones that just kind of fit into other builds and are also things that they don't really have a whole lot of yet. Like, there's not a whole lot of like basic skill buffing abilities, stuff like that yet. I don't know. I'd have to go look at the other classes because I'm not super knowledgeable on like the Sorcerer or the Barbarian, but I think there's only maybe a couple of basic skill builds between all the classes. So yeah. So after that, just carrying stuff, seasonal stuff forward there. The next thing is I'd like to see another one very simple readjustment to defensive uniques that I think will actually make them way better. So as the Diablo community has been exploring more and figuring things out, there's kind of been this consensus now that you need about 13,000 to 14,000 armor in order to be able to survive nightmare dungeons. So, and to be honest with you, so much so I have noticed that it actually feels like the whole, like, getting like the quad damage reductions is not as important as getting that armor. So don't get me wrong, having damage reductions is great. I'm not saying that you don't need them necessarily, but the armor is far more important. So I think if they just started putting, like, for example, armor and max life, or armor and then one type of damage reduction, I think there would be a lot of the uniques would be a lot better. Now obviously some uniques I think do have the armor, but I think that they might consider making it a more generalized thing on the defensive legendaries, just to make sure that if people want to run them in their builds and they want to do high nightmare dungeons with that unique, they're actually able to, because it's not really about damage currently in high nightmare dungeons. It's more so about just having the defense, and the main source of defenses is obviously going to be elemental resist cap and armor caps, right? So I think just putting more % total armor on uniques is just going to help out a ton, and they could also even consider doing that for amulets and stuff too. They could consider putting that stuff on there. Now granted, keep in mind, I think they're doing a great job with the uniques. I think Dolmen Stone is amazing. I think Banished Lord's Talisman is amazing. I think they're doing a great job with where the unique effects are specifically. I think there could just be a little bit more tuning to try to make the builds a little, I hate to say make a unique more generic, but at the same time I almost feel like you kind of have to, in a way, because in order to just like make it, there's always going to be, in a game like an ARPG, there's just always going to be that kind of meta thing to do, and if this is the requirement in order to be able to run the uniques in a high nightmare dungeon, then they either need to do that or they need to change what you need to be able to run a high nightmare dungeon defensive wise, right? And I can tell you from experience that yes, like, armor makes the difference. Like, me going from having like not capped armor to even being slightly below makes a massive difference, because I remember on my druid I put all I did to go from doing like an 85 to like a 96 was I put a 28% armor on my helmet or something like that, and it legitimately made that big of a difference. So so hopefully they either change the reliance on armor, or like I said, just put armor on more defensive stuff. It would make it just a lot better. Put armor on, you know, like amulets, just anything that can run it that people would normally want to run armor on. Just make sure that you probably put that on there, because that's going to be the main core thing that people need to do the High Nightmare dungeons. Okay. What else? What else? What else do I have here? Yes. And okay, so the next thing I would say is I would like to see them add in more legendaries for underused skills that don't really have anything still. Now, this still has not happened yet. You know, like for example, Ravens doesn't really have a legendary. Rabies doesn't really have a legendary. So I definitely think that that's that is something to be thinking about. But that being said, you know, I'm sure that'll be fixed in time, but just, you know, keep checking on the underused skills and make sure that you're actually like making relevant legendaries for them, because I find it very odd still that when you look across all the classes, you have like ultimates that don't really have legendary abilities still, and you just have other skills that don't have legendary aspects yet that do any form. So it just kind of makes them unused, undervalued, etc. So definitely just keep working on that, but I think that's something they are working on. You know, but I think specifically if I'm talking for the Druid, I would say yeah, just things like Ravens, Rabies, you know, these like super underused skills. I think everything else is actually being used quite a bit more now. Like I think Boulder would have been the next one I say, but with the addition of Dolmen Stone, they have made exactly what it needed in order to make a pretty solid build. So, you know, Boulder build is pretty cool, pretty fun, does a lot of damage, so that's pretty sweet. But I'd like to see more stuff like that for other underused skills. You know, like I said, there's been one kind of long-running theory that I know a lot of people to watch me like, of making Ravens like a core skill or something like that, and then making it to where it's like a spammable, just for like a pure companion build or something like that. I think that would be pretty cool. Okay, what do we got here? Oh, I don't even know if I can kill this guy, but we will see. But yeah. So, and with that, I also would like to point out they need to change, I think, this weird, how do I put this? So if you look at something like Aspect of Retaliation, it says your core skills deal up to 40% more damage based on the amount of Fortify. I don't know why they keep just making that for core skills, because with the way they have things balanced, right? And they always seem to make it to where only the core skills, I'll get back here, they seem to always make it to where only the core skills are the ones that can get these huge buffs, right? And I don't really care for that, because it's like, why make something like Aspect of the Tempest, for example, for the Druid, where it's supposed to increase the like your hurricane damage, for example, by like 180% or something like that over the life of it, but then not also make things that can buff it further? Because now when you compare it to like something like, I don't know, let's say Shred, right, that has like Aspect of the Blurred Beast to buff it a ton, well, Shred can also benefit from Aspect of Retaliation. It can also it can benefit from all these other things, so it just makes it to where it's like, why would you ever run Aspect of the Tempest and even make like a Hurricane build? Like it just doesn't make sense, because there's just not enough multipliers to actually make that skill like do a relevant amount of damage to where you would want to run that. Now there's all kinds of stuff functionally speaking to where like you can lower the cooldown on it, you could have the uptime up way more, all that stuff exists, so all the building blocks of like a build like that exists, but we're just lacking the numbers. So like if they were to change something like Shepherd's Aspect, where it says your core skills deal, you know, X% more damage depending on however many companions you have out, right? If they were to just change that to like, hey, your skills deal more damage to regardless of what kind of skill they are, or even if they like, if they wanted to like limit how many multipliers, if they at least could make a legendary, like for example, let's say they change Shepherd's Aspect from, hey, increase the damage of your core skills to increase the damage of your core skills and your companion skills or something. If they want to do it, just so at least it still stays in the theme. But I think that they definitely need to remove this weird fixation on core skills and try to make things a little bit more general. You know, like you look at like the vampire powers, right? All these things are very general and they can be applied to multiple different builds. So I think they did a really good job with these, but they need, you know, to do more of that. You know, take a look at the legendaries, be like, hey, is there a way we can make this maybe a little bit more generalized? you know, etc., etc., so in order for us to you know, increase, you know, build flexibility in the amount of builds that are created, because there are a lot of skills right now, and I know I primarily play Druid, so that's going to be the thing I can speak to the most, that I think could be a lot more interesting if there was just more flexibility and more room to actually make them do damage. You know, you could have some pretty fun builds going on, right? Okay, so after that, this is going to be kind of going back to the whole defensive thing with uniques, but a different way. I think that they should actually get rid of any single resist stat inside of the Paragon glyphs, because I don't think anybody's necessarily going to be running those. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me to be doing that. You know, it's like if you have the option between getting an all resist glyph or a single resist glyph, I just don't see the reason why you don't get all resist. So I think they should just change all of the nodes that are single resist into all resist things, and that would actually make it to where people are more incentivized to take them, because it's kind of bad if you need to go like out of your way just to get, you know, like 20% lightning resist, but it would make more sense for you to go out of your way on your Paragon tree if like you were getting like 8% to everything, right? Because then if you got a few of those on top of like your amulets and your rings, it'd make it a lot more simple on how to hit that cap as you grow in power. So it's not like you would still be hitting the cap immediately right out of World Tier 4 or anything like that, but yeah. So I think they should just go ahead and make all that changes. Let's see here. Oh, so I also think in addition to the Paragon, I think they should change more nodes to encourage the mixing of damage types like they did with Thunderstruck. So for example, you look at like, let's see here, this one right here. So it says deal 35% increased overpower damage. Okay, so that's pretty good, right? Especially for like a Blood Surge build like I'm playing. But what if they were to say, hey, you know, we're going to give you a bigger multiplicative multiplier for stacking additive overpower damage just to help incentivize something that you're already doing? I think that would be pretty cool too. I think that the whole idea of like incentivizing the stacking of additive damage would just make more types of additive damage more useful. So I think they should kind of go through and maybe rework, go through and just kind of rework some of these nodes that various classes have to try to maybe play towards that a little bit more. Now, not all of them, obviously. Sometimes, you know, because you don't want things to get too generic where all of a sudden it just becomes, oh, you know, take this node and then build additive and then boom, there you go, cool, right? But I do think there's a little bit more room. I think there's some legendary nodes that could really just be changed altogether. So, yep. So I got two last things I'd like to say. The first one's going to be, you know, look through the legendaries and maybe change the category on some so it's not so cumbersome and you can have more build flexibility. So I made a video a few days ago talking about aspect of nature savagery. I really don't think that that should be an offensive. I understand why they put it as an offensive, because obviously it does have the potential to proc offensive abilities, but it also has the potential to proc utility abilities. It also has the potential to proc defensive abilities. So I don't think that that kind of idea stands, and I think that, you know, they could improve the functionality like of that aspect a lot. But one of the main issues I see with it is even if I did want to run it, I just don't see why I would ever want to give up an offensive legendary slot to run that, because it essentially acts as what's the word, like a converter, I guess. Like, 'cause it's not like when it says with that specific example, it says, you know, your werebear skills become earth and your werewolf skills become storm for the purpose of nature's fury. Well, the thing is it's not making it to where your werewolf skills are procking you know, werebear skills and vice versa. It's just making it so your werewolf skills have the potential to proc earth skills, right? And stuff like that. It's not very useful in general, right? But the fact that it, on top of that, it just takes up an offensive legendary slot, like, to me that seems a lot like symbiotic aspect, where, you know, whenever it procs it reduces the cooldown. I think it should be treated as the same type as like symbiotic aspect, but for some reason it's not. So definitely go through and maybe readjust the category of certain legendaries just to make sure that they actually fit what they're supposed to be doing, because that is definitely not like a fully offensive legendary or anything like that. And then yeah, so then the last thing I'd like to say is something that they're going to be doing with BlizzCon. You know, they said they're going to be adding in more in-game events and stuff like that on December 5th. So yeah, just keep doing that. Just keep adding more in-game. I don't even care really what it is. Just add more. Just more stuff to do, really. That's kind of where my head is where my head is on that. So yeah, just keep adding things in, whether it be more Uber bosses, the whole gauntlet idea that they talked about at BlizzCon. I like that because that's going to be the leaderboard feature. I like that. Just keep that stuff coming. Keep on trucking with that. And yeah, but I think that's just about it for everything that I'd like to see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.